Hello everybody, this is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics and Living, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to retort to the idea that the Catholic Church is not a Christian church. Now, before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Gloria Patri, Filio et Spiritui Sancto, succuterat in principio et nunc et semper et saecula saeculorum. Amen. I want to do an episode on this because I get this expression quite a bit. Catholics are not Christians, or I was a Catholic, now I'm a Christian. Catholics are not Christians. And I find this mindset to be just shockingly replete with ignorance on church history. I'm not saying these people are necessarily ignorant, because ignorance is not stupidity. Stupidity and ignorance are not the same. Ignorance is just lack of knowledge. But I also understand why Protestants would make these assertions that are just based on outright fallacy and mendacity, because they don't know any better. Most of them were raised in a milieu to be suspicious and cast aspersions and look askance on the Catholic Church, either by their pastor, by their family, and so forth. And they were taught, that the Catholics do this, the Catholics do that, the Catholics are the Antichrist. Many of the Protestant fundamentalists, especially the more fundamentalist denominations, that's what they're taught, especially the Mormons and the more of the cults, but certainly it's kind of a pervasive theme. And so I can understand why people would think that, who were not raised in the Catholic Church. Now, if you're raised Catholic and you were not well catechized, and maybe you had a moribund faith, and then you go to a mega church and you feel something on the music, you feel the emotion, and then you do the altar call and you feel born again and so forth, and then you're told, well, the Catholics do this, the Catholics do that, then you're like, oh my God, I was raised in a cult this whole time, now I'm a Christian, Catholics aren't Christians. So again, I can sympathize as to why Protestants would think that Catholics aren't Christians. But look, guys, it's just basic history. It's basic history. We have an episode here, Ask Siri who founded the Catholic Church. And the only answer that Siri gives when you ask who founded the Baptist Church, who founded the Lutheran Church, the only two churches that Siri says Jesus Christ founded it were the Orthodox and the Catholics. And this makes sense because the Orthodox and the Catholics, we are the ancient Christian faiths. We are the faiths that have existed since the beginning. Now, if you're not familiar with this, if you're Protestant, Matthew 16, Jesus gives Peter the keys to the kingdom. And this is a reference to the Davidic kingdom, where the prime minister essentially was given the keys by the king, and whatever the keys opened were open, and whatever, and so forth. And so after Peter makes this confession to Jesus, Jesus says, I'll give you the keys of the kingdom. Whatever you bind is bind, whatever you bound is unbind, and the gates of hell will never prevail. And so from there we get Petrine, or Peter primacy, or Peter authority, which you see later played out in the Apostles and Acts of the Apostles, in the Gospels. We have episodes in this where Peter is always the leader. And after Peter was martyred on Vatican Hill in Rome, that's why the church is in the Vatican. His bones are there. We have his bones. The Lutherans don't have his bones. We have his bones. There were successors to Peter, because the understanding was that Christ founded a visible church. He also proclaimed that there was only going to be one church. He wanted church unity. And so Peter's successor was Linus, and then Anacletus, and Clement, and so forth. And we have 266 successors of Peter. But either way, if you look at the 100s, the 200s, the 300s, when Christianity was spreading, they didn't use, I should say, in the early apostolic church, they did not use the word Catholic. You can see it read in Acts, where Acts, they talk about the movement of Jesus and his disciples as the way. Then later in Acts, it talks about how they were called Christians. Where does the term Catholic come from? A lot of Protestants just don't know. So the first time you see the word Catholic being used is by Ignatius of Antioch, who was what we call in the Catholic world an apostolic father. There's 3 apostolic fathers. You have Polycarp, Clement of Rome, and Ignatius of Antioch. And the reason they're called apostolic is that they were directly trained by an apostle. And in case of Ignatius, it was the Apostle John. We have historical evidence of this. Later on, we have church fathers. There's a lot of church fathers: Ignatius of Lyon, Augustine of Hippo, Jerome, Ambrose. You have a lot of the Eastern fathers: Athanasius, St. John Chrysostom. I mean, there's tons. And these are going to be theologians of the early Christian faith, which is the Catholic faith, for until about 700 AD. But the first time you hear the word Catholic being used is by Ignatius of Antioch in 110 AD. And he says, quote, and you can find this in his letter to the Smyrnians, "Wherever the bishop appears, there let the people be. As wherever Jesus Christ is, there is the Catholic Church." So he uses the term Catholic in 110 AD. And what does Catholic mean? It just means universal, kind of everybody. Because prior, you can see definitely played out in the New Testament, the message of Jesus Christ was first given to the promised people, the Jews. And then later you can see how, especially in Acts, where it's then spread to the Gentiles. It's spread to everybody in the world can be saved by Jesus Christ. And so the term universal means you don't have to be, you can be free, you can be slave, you can be from Greece, or you can be from Egypt, you can be anybody. It's a universal church, and that's what the term means. So if you look historically, yes, the Corinthian church, the Philippian church, the Ephesian churches, and later as the church spread, because of St. Thomas, to India, St. Mark spread it to Egypt, to Alexandria, of course, Paul, Peter, all these guys went west. These were all Christians. And the word Christian and Catholic were synonymous. They're interchangeable. For the first 1,000 years of church history, they were one and the same. They were one and the same. And again, for all you Protestants who've been imbued in such anti-Catholicism, I strongly recommend you read, and you can find these for free, read the writings of the apostles, the apostolic fathers. Later on, read the church fathers. And you can see that their writings, and again, these are first generation away from the apostles. Their writings are exceedingly Catholic. They truly believe in the presence of, the real presence of the body and blood of Jesus Christ. You can read this in their writings. They believed in the loftier status that we give to Mary. For example, we don't worship her as a goddess. She's just held as a high status because she bore the Mother of God, the Theotokos, and so forth. All the writings are very consistent with Catholic teaching. And so lots of times the Protestants will say, well, there was a mass apostasy. So yeah, maybe the Catholic Church and the Orthodox were the true church, but there was a mass apostasy. And that's why my fill-in-the-blank church is the true church. Okay, well, show me, prove it. When was the mass apostasy? Because I'll tell you that you can read, in the 100s, you have Clement of Rome, you have Ignatius. And in the 200s, you have Irenaeus. The 300s, you have Athanasius. There is no period of time in the early church that we don't have surviving writings from the early Christian church fathers. And consistently, they're Catholic in their doctrine, belief, and so forth. Consistently Catholic. So there was no apostasy. We have to justify an apostasy to justify the existence of fill-in-the-blank denominational church. But there was never an apostasy. And if you say there's an apostasy, the onus is on you, brothers and sisters in Christ, to prove it. It's not on the Catholics, because we have unbroken theology since the early church. Yes, was some of that theology needed to be fleshed out? Yes, but a lot of the best of Protestantism comes from Catholicism, namely the belief in the Trinity. That had to be fleshed out in early Catholic councils, Nicaea, Ephesus, Chalcedon, all these. The belief in the hypostatic union of Jesus. Jesus is true God and true man. Again, this is all fleshed out in the early church councils. Which books were going to be in the Bible? This was fleshed out in church councils as well, going back to 380 AD. So all these things were being fleshed out by the Catholic Church. Again, history vindicates the Catholic Church as being one of the ancient faiths. Now, you say one of the ancient faiths is Orthodox and Catholic, so why was there a split? Well, we have an episode on this, but it was largely not theological. Sometimes we'll say it was the filioque, who proceeded from what, and so forth. It's not really that. It was really political. You saw after 1,000 years, the West was more Latin-based, and the East was more Greek-based in their liturgy, in their language. And then you saw the Byzantine Empire was preponderant in the East, and then you saw in the West, you saw these barbarian kingdoms come into their fullness, like Charlemagne in the 800s. And so a lot of it was political. But these are the two ancient faiths. I would tell you, if you're Lutheran or Presbyterian or Baptist, you cannot trace your theology to any of the church fathers. If you time traveled to 250 AD in Cappadocia, you would not find any of your theology in any of the church fathers. If you time traveled to 350 AD after Christianity, aka Catholicism, was legalized, you would not find anything but masses being done everywhere, because masses were being done in the New Testament, and St. Paul talks about this in 1 Corinthians 11. So they're one and the same, Orthodox and Christianity, and that's why when the Orthodox officially, and there were earlier attempts and then later attempts to reunite them, but 1054 is typically given for the date for the Great Schism. We believe that the Orthodox are descendants from the apostles, and they have valid priestly ordination, so their holy orders are valid. They have the seven sacraments that Christ intended, outward signs instituted by Christ to initiate grace. That's the definition of a sacrament. A lot of Protestants only have 2, maybe 1. Originally there were 7. So the Orthodox have 7. The Orthodox have apostolic succession, therefore they can trace their lineage all the way back to Peter as well. And the fundamental difference between Catholic and Orthodox is just loyalty to Petrine authority, or loyalty to the successors of Peter. But as a whole, and there are exceptions, and just for the sake of time, and we have other videos on Orthodoxy here, as a whole, as St. John Paul II said, Orthodoxy and Catholicism are 2 lungs of the same body. But anyone who says that Catholics are not Christians, just simply are so ignorant in history, because the only Christian church for the first millennia of Christianity were the Catholics. And again, the term Catholic was being used 1 generation after the last apostle died. So please, any Protestant, I strongly, if you have an earnest desire to learn about the origins of our faith, the Christian faith in general, but certainly the Catholic faith, please dive into church history. As Cardinal Newman said, who was a Protestant who later became a Catholic cardinal, he said, those who read history cease to be Protestant. And there's such truisms to this. A lot of Protestants who have converted to Catholicism, and you see a lot of Protestant pastors and theologians convert to Catholicism, and typically the road to it is history and the church fathers. You rarely ever see well-known Catholic theologians go to Protestantism. It is exceedingly rare. Typically what happens, it's poorly catechized Catholics who go to Protestantism. So it's low information voters go to Protestantism, where it's the high information voter Protestants who go to Catholicism. So guys, either way, post in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care. God bless and pray.